Give everybody a minute to jump in. No problem, guys. Happy to do stuff that you guys like. Yeah, everyone mash the like button, whichever. I think it's probably down there for you guys. Um, Make sure you subscribe if you haven't. I assume everyone that's probably jumping on this is subscribed already. Let's get going here without a lot of further ado. Um, I'll start with basketball just because that's the top of brain right now. Obviously, big news of was it this week? I guess it was this week. Miles Kelly's coming back from for his junior season. That gives Georgia Tech their leading scorer back, their best shooter, and a real weapon, and a guy that was getting some seriously like legit NBA looks and getting workouts with teams and stuff. Clearly wasn't really ready to make that jump yet, but I think it was important for him to get that feedback from the NBA, to go through the process to get worked out. Really up to the last minute, he had to work out on the last day that you could withdraw. So it goes to show like he made the most of his opportunity to get that feedback, and that's kind of what you're looking for when you do test the waters like that. It's not just because you want the status of saying, "Hey, I declared for the draft," or "I did this," or "I did that." You want to be able to say, "Hey, I am," you know, getting the most out of this opportunity. It's almost like an internship or something where you can get this opportunity to talk to coaches and work them out and get feedback on your game and all that kind of stuff. And he had that opportunity, so that was great for him. It's a big boost for Georgia Tech. Now the big question becomes, what will the lineup look like? Who will be the rotation guys? All that stuff's going to get sorted out here as the summer goes on and along, and then however they play out the season. I don't know what the plan is yet for in terms of if they're going to do an exhibition or if they're doing a two secret scrimmages like they did last year, or if they're going to do what. So we'll still find a lot of that out over the coming weeks from Damon and his staff and kind of what they're up to. Yeah, Miles to me is like adding a huge piece back to the team. He's a guy that has a tremendous skill set. They can shoot the ball. Um, you know, the bigger questions are probably like, this just popped up in the post and the chat, but it's like, the post position, how are they going to play? I assume they're going to play, and based on the few conversations I have with Damon, they're going to play four out and one in. So you can do that with Ebenezer and Tyshawn Claude. Now, which one of them gets even more minutes? That's a debatable topic as well, right? Like, who's going to start over? Do you start Ebenezer? Do you start Claude? I don't know. I think that's the thing that's going to get worked out in the off season. Ebenezer's not shown that he can play long minutes yet. What's that look like for him? How effective is he offensively? How does Tyshawn Claude adapt to playing at the next level up? He's managed each time he's kind of leveled his game up to play very consistently throughout his career. So I'm assuming that he will do the same thing here. But the ACC is a different animal, right? And that's where you get into the learning curve. You saw with Lance Terry and with oh goodness, the big man last year on the team that was really good down the stretch. Oh my goodness, why am I blinking out on his name? Yeah, Javon Franklin. Thank you. So you saw Javon, right? Like he got healthy and he adapted to the curve, and that happens. Lance Terry did to a point. He still is a little emotional, I think, and he would tell you that he has to be more consistent game to game. I think you would see he play a couple good ones and have a real clunker. But it's interesting. They have a lot of different options, right? You add Kawasi Reeves, who's a really dynamic slash guy who can play really 2 through 4, depending if you're playing kind of a wide open style. You have, Amari Abram, the combo guard that's going to be really talented and hard to keep off the court. You have Debo back, who's a dynamic, fluid scorer when healthy. Everyone's got to remember he played last year with a pretty serious Achilles injury that made it difficult for him to even get around at times. And he played through it and toughed it out. And I think that really impacted his game. So I think you'll see a better version of Debo this year with some health on his side. And then what do you get from some of the unknown guys like Jalen Forrest, who's also a combo guard? Does he give you anything immediately? Is he a guy that's a down the line guy? Is he end of the bench guy? Is he a rotation guy? We don't know yet with him. He didn't shoot the ball great in his freshman year, but he also played a lot and was hard to keep off the court there. So how does he adapt? Tafara, the kid from UMass, is tremendously talented. He's a fluid kind of 3 through 5 almost level guy that can play inside and out. And so he's interesting if you can get something out of him. He just didn't play much. So I think there's enough bodies. Me personally, I would have liked to see one more big guy come in. And I think you saw that with the attempt to get Papakante. And you have Bay Nandago, the kid from up north, and the Rutgers flip, and he's a guy that can play 4 and 5 theoretically. I think he's sort of your emergency Band-Aid guy right now too, like at the center position. So I think they have 3 or 4 guys that can play there. They're going to have trouble when they play the Armando Baycots and if they get in foul trouble. So, but how many of those teams are they going to see next year? That's the other question. I haven't dug into the whole ACC yet, but there weren't a lot last year. So it's going to be interesting. This is, as Josh Pastner said, Brian Gregory, Paul Hewitt. ACC is a guard-driven league, and you kind of go as your guards go, and that's been historically how it's worked at Georgia Tech. So, it's going to come down to Kyle Sturdivant, who I didn't mention already, Amari Abram, Miles Kelly, Debo, Kawasi, like those guys, Lance Terry, that's going to make or break the team. And the one thing that Damon does have now is he actually has some depth. So I think that they have an opportunity to kind of roll more guys. So that's going to be real interesting to me. And obviously they're recruiting pretty well out of the gate. I thought it was real interesting from Russ Wood's conversation with Curtis Givens that he really loves Pershing Williams and loves Damon Stoudemire. And these are guys he just met. They were not recruiting him before. Obviously, Damon was in the NBA, and Pershing was at Kennesaw State, so he wasn't recruiting that kid. It's a top 100 kid. They're not getting that kid at Kennesaw. So these guys are hitting the ground running with their recruiting. That's good to see. That's something that I kind of wanted to see. If you were going to make this move, that's one of the areas you got to amp up in. And I've been excited to see that more than 2 guys are recruiting now. Before it was 2 guys with Josh on his staff, and Brian Greger is kind of 1.5 guys. So seeing a little bit more action on the recruiting front's been exciting to kind of see from someone that wants to cover a good basketball program. That's where I come from. Like, I was very excited when I got this job, and I wanted to see what they could do. Yeah, Caleb Wilson was on campus this week. There's been some other dudes on campus. It's going to be interesting to see what they can do, how they can close, and how much can he sell the NBA thing. And then there's been a lot of positive press about Damon and the Celtic stuff and all that. And I don't know, the Coach Jones thing. I really do think that that's just like the kid mixed somebody up. Uh, we'll try to get to the bottom of that one when Russ talks to him again. So in Russ's defense there, Russ, his primary gig's not covering Georgia Tech, so he wasn't, and they just had a staff change, so he wasn't like thinking anything of it when the kid's like, Coach Jones this, Coach Jones that to him. And so when he got off the phone, he texted me. He's like, "Who's Coach Jones?" I was like, "I have no idea who that is." Now it could legit be somebody that we just haven't met yet. It could just be like, it could be a GA for all I know or something, but it could just be he mistaken like Coach Parker or Coach Hobbs or somebody for someone else. You'd be surprised how often that happens with these kids. Like, there'll be kids that legit like were being recruited like by some school or whatever, and like they can't even tell me like who their main recruiter is because they forget, or they talk to these guys through DMs or texts or whatever. They don't actually. There's not as much phone conversation stuff going on in recruiting these days in general. So like, I think that there are times when guys get mixed up. So don't like hyper focus on that thing. I think that's a thing that to not worry about. But kind of going back to the basketball thing, I think the schedule is what the schedule is. We don't know all of the non-conference yet. Obviously, playing in the Diamond Head, so that'll be cool. They'll get a Big Ten game or SEC game now. The Big Ten Challenge is done. I don't think they've announced those yet. So be interesting what the basketball schedule is. Like because there's not really probably a lot Damon could do at this point because they're kind of locked in. So what's going to be his scheduling philosophy versus like whatever Josh's was. Those things are all going to be real interesting to watch going ahead. But I'll take any basketball kind of questions while we're on this topic, and then I'll shift to football because I know probably people are more anxious to talk about that right now. Does Georgia Tech make the tournament? As I said on the board, man, like you got to give Damon like some leash here to figure this out. Like if they get in the tournament, he's going to be the ACC Coach of the Year. I think what you want to see is them finish above like 11. I think that would be progress in year one. You got a young team still in some spots, some kind of mismatched pieces. I think that trying to get to the tournament's a lofty goal out of the gate for any first-year coach. My drink is caffeine-free Coke Zero, which I can only get at like one or two places. But we call it Evening Zero in my house. That's one of my few vices. So someone asked about the schedule beyond the UGA game and the SEC and the Classic. Depends. Sometimes they sign the contracts. Like there's home and away games and things like that. So that can impact the schedule. Like there's some games that haven't been played for whatever reason. I don't know where those stand. Like the UAB series they were supposed to have. Like some of those got pushed because of COVID cancellations. There's some games that are they got canceled because of COVID. So I'm expecting there's going to be like there's probably some stuff that's already locked in from the scheduling standpoint. They do a lot of it like in the off season, but with the Diamond Head, that's going to soak up quite a few games too. Someone asked me if they're going to play Georgia and Phillips Arena at any point going forward. There was a discussion about playing at State Farm and playing a game in Duluth. There's been discussions about home and away. and then having a neutral site game the third year. It's kind of been all over the place. I don't know where the thing is. It's not just whatever Damon or Jay Bat or whatever wants. You have to get Josh Brooks and Mike White to agree to like try to, if you want to play neutral sites again. So it's a complicated thing. You have newer AD and Josh Brooks, a new coach in Mike White. You have a new coach in Damon Stoudemire and a new AD at Georgia Tech. So I would be a little surprised if that ball's moving down the court at all at this point about playing in State Farm or playing in the Gwinnett Center or whatever the hell it's called now, or playing in the Stegosaurus and the Thriller Dome. Like, I don't know that that's a high priority thing right now for either of the for anyone involved, quite frankly. And I don't know Mike White enough to like have any inkling of where he stands on um, those type of games. I feel like when I'd have to ask Russ this. I feel like when they played like USF when he was at Florida, for example, I felt like they played that game in Amalie Arena, which is where the Lightning play, instead of like at Yingling Center, which is USF's the Sundome. So maybe he's cool with doing some games like that. I don't know, but that's not a rivalry game like Georgia Tech. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. The UAB series might have been canceled. Someone asked me that in the chat. Like, I just don't know. Like, that's something no one's cared enough about that I haven't like dug into, like the scheduling, like over the last few years. It just wasn't that. Why do I think Davon Smith left? I thought he wasn't happy at Georgia Tech. That's my personal take on it. I haven't talked to Davon about it. Nice kid. I think the academic piece might have been a lot for him. He stayed home from the AC tournament to focus on school. So I think that was as much of a factor as anything. Is I just never got the vibe he was like happy at Georgia Tech. He didn't strike. There's typically like the personalities I can see like that work at Georgia Tech, and he struck me as much more of a guy you would have seen playing for like Hewitt as a one and done type kid. And maybe that's what he thought he was going to be. He was going to come here and play 1 year and then go to the league. And he has that level of talent. He just is not harnessed or developed very much. So he's got NBA skills, and that's the frustrating part about watching Davon is like you can see the athleticism, the spark, the ability. But again, like if you can't master the mental side of the game and execute and shoot at a high percentage and finish at the rim, the things that are killing his game, then you're not going to play in the NBA. And that's going to be the big thing that's going down. So I really enjoyed watching Davon play too, man. He used to fly like around the court. I enjoyed watching his elevation. I like watching tough guards. This is one of the things that was great about watching Jose for all those years, or Josh Okogie, or Marcus Georges Hunt. Or Amon, like those guys are all real tough, right? And that's fun to watch. So that's what's going on. Someone asked me about Jalen Moore. The thing with him, he was not happy on the bench. It was visible, like he was upset when Josh kind of pulled him out of the rotation at the end of last year at times in certain games and wasn't playing him. And I think he wanted assurances they had to define role. And when he didn't get that, he decided to leave. And I don't know if that's going to work out for him or not. And that's what we're going to probably find out here in the next couple of weeks. Like, I thought it was a bad idea for him to jump. I get that he just transferred to Oklahoma or whatever, but he doesn't have enough of that happened while I was on vacation. I forgot about that. Jalen ended up at Oklahoma, but I just don't think his game's like developed enough yet either. Like his shooting's not there. His touch isn't there. He makes bad decisions with the ball at times. Um, he can't dribble and create his own shot. He doesn't really have a strong mid-range game. You saw flashes of it, but he's a little bit smaller than Moses was. You could see the flashes of Moses. I think it would be good to have him because the situation they're in now, the kid from UMass is going to have to fill that role probably, or Bay, and those are really unproven pieces too. So you'd rather have Jalen, who's done it in the ACC and had decent games and stuff. But I don't know that what they were running didn't fit him well, and he wasn't developing in the fashion I thought he would. But everyone has opinions about these things. I watch the kid play a lot. He just hasn't developed an outside shot that's consistent. He's not a good enough defender around the rim and shot blocker, and to play more of like a undersized five, like that kind of thing. So I don't know what his role is, and that's what I'll be curious about to see what Oklahoma does with him, because I don't know. I understand maybe how he fits into what they were doing based on what I haven't watched much of them since Porter went there, but if you look at what he did at Loyola Chicago, I can see where maybe that would make sense. So, because they did play a little more traditional, two high posts kind of thing. Where does Josh Pastner land in the next coaching carousel? He had overtures. He decided to sit out. And he wants to do TV for a year and re-energize. I don't know, man. I could see Josh ending up back like at Texas, somewhere like Rice. I don't know those coaching situations, so I don't want to necessarily throw out a bunch of schools. But like in the Houston area, I think he would do well there. He's still connected, even in the Memphis area a little bit. I just don't know what the job is for him that he's got to find. He's got to find a spot where they're going to be patient with him to go with what he wants to do, and he needs to find the right level for what he wants. If he doesn't want to do, if he wants to run the program the way he did at Georgia Tech, a place like Rice makes sense. If he wants to go back to what he was doing at Memphis and play wide open and play the game in recruiting, then he would, if he wants to do that, he's more likely to have to go sit on someone's bench for a year to rehab his image a little bit as a recruiter. Does Josh Pastner stay in TV and replace Dick Vitale for the next 40 years? You would love that because everyone else would hate it. It would be interesting because he'd be like a cross between Dick Vitale and Bill Walton with Bill Walton will talk about like the dead or whatever for like 20 minutes in the middle of a game, and then like astrophysics and whoever's doing the game with him's like rolling their eyes, and you can like literally hear them rolling their eyes without seeing it. And I can see Josh doing that. It would be very funny to hear him talk about the movie Heat again for like the 40th time. That's the one thing I love Josh, but having maybe like a 9-minute press conference instead of a 15 or 20-minute one will be probably a little bit of a welcome thing in my world. So Damon being a little more concise and NBA-ish will be a lot more probably like Paul Hewitt's press conferences. This is a fascinating question. This is not basketball related, but this is fascinating. Are there well-known people in the GT world who post regularly on JOL behind their screen names? Yes. And then there's some who don't. And but there's people like in high positions and different things. There's people who people will call famous that are on the site. We're sort of the go-to spot for GT fans. So yeah, we have some interesting people. I've had the opportunity to meet some of them, and most 99% of the subs are just rabid Georgia Tech fans, right? Like they're not going to be some significant person. Maybe they run a major business or they do whatever. Or I have a really interesting advertiser getting ready to come on that you guys will love too. That's a barbecue person we're gonna do some barbecue content, maybe like once or twice a month, like through the football season. So I think you guys will be excited about that because it's always one of the favorite um, sort of side topics that goes on and on and on. But yeah, so that's going to be an interesting one to watch. Guys, keep it out. That's a little hint. Let's switch gears. Talk a little bit about football. Obviously, it's an official visit weekend. I think that any other hoops recruits to keep an eye on. I don't know. I'm still trying to get a feel for what they're up to. I think with the new staff, all these kids are kind of wanting to spend time with them now. So it'll be. I don't know where that's going to end up, but that's what's going on. So, all right, we will switch over to football now, and it's first of all we had the first Georgia Tech camp was on Thursday. Both Russell and I were there, and the only media there for the whole time, and it was great. Coach Key took me around and let me see kind of. They're in the middle of a pretty major renovation of all the football stuff, and even doing some stuff in the locker room. Not like a massive overhaul, more of just touching up that area. But coaches' offices, team meeting rooms, all that stuff's being updated, fixed up, and then they're working a lot of cool stuff. And I'll get into some of that as I can share it. There's some stuff I can't share. You know how it works, but camp was cool. It was cool. Kylan Fox was there. There were a lot of interesting guys there. Jordan Floyd hanging out for a little bit. Kylan Fox actually stayed for the whole camp, which was kind of surprising. So that was a good day. And then you got to see some of the current players work guys out, like Zach Pyron and Haynes King were out there working quarterbacks out. You guys like Miles Brooks out there working the DBs, Jackson Long with the tight ends. So there was a good little group of guys from the current team out there, and it was good to see them. Apparently, the summer workouts are just getting underway, and they're pretty intense from what I'm gathering from just hearing the scuttlebutt from what's going on. So yeah, that's sort of the long and short of the camp piece of it. We've obviously gone into more detail on the site, and I try not to devalue all subscriptions by like getting way into the weeds of talking about stuff on here. But it was interesting. Harpering, so Luke Harpering, who you're mentioning, in the chat was at the camp, and he's a linebacker, tight end. Like he's being recruited as an athlete. He's grown, I think, 2.5 inches and like 30 pounds or something in a year. And so the sort of holdup, I think, on Georgia Tech recruiting was, Key does believe somewhat in the size metrics of the Nick Saban and George O'Leary had that, and even Paul Johnson to an extent, they were just different with his system. But like you're looking for guys in certain size buckets, like certain height, weights, and all those things. And he finally started to check those boxes. And the thing with Luke is looking at his family and mom and dad and everything, he could still grow a lot more. So the expectations are that he's not done growing. So what is he going to look like, in another year or two? Like, is he going to grow another couple of 3 inches? It's very possible. So he could end up being a defensive end, a tight end, linebacker. He gives you some versatility. He was very athletic, ran well. That was the big thing that I think that turned some heads was he ran his 40 really well, apparently. But I do think he's a guy who could end up being, a tight end or a defensive end. I don't. If he stopped growing, maybe he would be a linebacker. But it's fascinating to kind of see that, and it was cool to see like how excited the staff was at watching Luke and him kind of impressing them with what he did. So I think it's cool to, someone said in the chat, it's cool to have those connections, right? Like just because Matt was a great basketball player doesn't mean Georgia Tech shouldn't recruit a son who's a good football player. I think that's a cool way to continue the generational thing. Keith Brookings' son, that's probably more of a Russell question. I wasn't like paying attention to to that. So that's more of a Russell question, to be honest with you. Going into the OV weekend, it'll be a little bit different actually because of all the construction going on with football facilities and stuff. So I'll be curious to see kind of what the takeaways are from the kids because right now they're still like finishing up quite a few projects. Things are not quite done. So they're going to get a little bit of different look, but most of these kids have been to Georgia Tech before. So like, I don't know how big of a deal it is. There's maybe one kid that's visiting that hasn't been on campus before. So it'll be a big OV weekend. Russell will be covering all of the post visit reactions. We'll be writing stories up and blowing away coverage with that. So stay tuned for all of that. Definitely keep an eye on Matthew Fuller, the running back from Wayne County. I have a good feeling about him in Georgia Tech, and I wonder if this visit will put him over the edge a little bit. Someone asked about Webb Davis, and you know, I don't know. Like, I was trying to think of like what my thoughts are on Webb. I don't know. I don't have like Russell probably has like a sharp take on him, but he's been on campus a couple times. Coach Wade's recruiting him. He's had some decent interest and stuff. And are they going to close that kid? I don't know. Are they trying to close him? I don't know. It's interesting because I think the O-line board's still a little bit in flux. And I think you're seeing that. And that's going to be real interesting to watch kind of how Jeep Wade and Brent Key handle the O-line thing because they definitely have differences in kind of what they're looking for and what their recruiting profiles are typically because Jeep's been a guy that's taken sort of lesser known guys and try to build them up, right? And Brent's been a guy that's had high level guys at times and really high level guys at Bama and developed them. So what is sort of the happy medium there? I think that's going to be something they work out, but Brent seems to be pretty into letting Jeep do his job. So I think, most coaches I know are like, you get a leash to make calls and until you screw it up, you keep that leash. So it would be, it was interesting. Yeah, it'd be interesting with Webb because if they're, a UGA guy, a UGA people and converting them, that's been a common theme throughout my time covering Georgia Tech. It was funny seeing Georgia's quarterback commit, Dylan Raiola, was at Georgia Tech's camp. His little brother was camping and playing. And it was just very funny to watch them. And the family actually was like, hey, can you not like tweet out a picture or whatever? They asked one of us to not make a big deal out of Dylan being there. And I thought that was pretty funny. So the end of the day, I think with everything that's going on, a lot of that stuff seems to be a little less prevalent than it was. Like the whole my family's, an X, Y, or Z. I think right now it's all about fits and high school kids in particular don't have the breathing room to make those calls and to be like, hey, I grew up a Georgia fan, so I'm not going to, my parents went there, so I'm not going to let Florida, Georgia Tech, or Auburn or South Carolina recruit me. Those days are kind of gone. Like kids really don't think like that as much. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with, there's been quite a few UGA fans, UGA legacy guys that have, played at Georgia Tech. My favorite story is about BJ Bostic, the former slot back at Georgia Tech, who literally had UGA sheets on his bed at home and had to like go throw all that stuff away when he committed and didn't, end up going there. And then they came along at the very end of his recruitment, showed up at Mike Bobo and Willie Martinez, the defense coordinator at the time, the OC, showed up at the state playoff games. Tech had burned all their road time. And I promised BJ that I would go to them. He was playing Fred Holton's team, the playoffs in Louisville, Georgia. Went there, no like one bar of a cell phone, maybe. And covered this game and watched Bobo and Willie try to recruit BJ and flip him to go to Georgia. And that was a tough spot they put that kid in. And he stayed. He was like, look, where were you guys? He had the right attitude. He's like, where were you guys 6 months ago? And, that's going to be interesting. What's up with Russell's comment that no one talking about only one Georgia commit so far? I don't know. Sometimes Russell's like sending you guys like little mixed messages. I don't know if that one was. I think there are some more guys that are going to pop publicly soon. I just think we're a little bit away from that, but obviously some things changed with Jakari and with Duke, so they're back to the QB being the only local guy. So I like what they've done so far with the class. I think that if you look at they finally are getting back in New Orleans. Ricky Broomfield's done like a really nice job there recruiting. He actually had a really cool tight end in from New Orleans for the camp the other day. I was kind of surprised he didn't get offered. He didn't run well at the camp, but it's an interesting kid. Was very good in the routes. But yeah, you look at it right now. They have a kid from the Panhandle. You got a kid from the Tampa area. You got a kid from South Carolina, and then a Georgia kid, and then a kid from Illinois. There's a good mix, right? There's going to be a lot more in-state kids that come down the pipe. I mean, if you just look at the offer board and like who's visiting and all of that stuff, there will end up being more local dudes that come into the fold. I think right now it's just a matter of guys taking visits. I mean, right now they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of their 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 OVs. More than half of them are in-state kids. So, yeah, I think there's some commitments coming. There's some kids I think that are going to end up committing to once this is all kind of rolling. Right now we're entering the commitment period, and between now and basically the middle of August is when the bulk of the 2024 classes kind of come together for everyone. And all of our rankings are kind of jacked up at the moment because they're shifted towards teams that have more commits. So like the more commits you have, the better off you are in our rankings until you get to the magic number, which was 20. And we may need to even change that math equation. I think Georgia Tech's 43 right now with the 6 they have. So, it's going to be a moving, ongoing thing there. But, I'm not big into I try to stay away from the predictions like that Russell does because I've been burned so many times doing this for so long. So I tend to stay away from that stuff. But I think that it's going to be – I think June should be pretty solid for Georgia Tech and early in July as well. Moving over to the football team side of things, I think they feel decent about where they're at. I think the guys are excited about the players they've been adding through the portal. Obviously, it would have been nice to get a corner, like a more established corner in the portal that could come in and be a key guy. But other than that, I think they did a good job. The one sort of poaching was a Kilo Stone, which according to my old Miss sources, was a little bit of a sore spot with Lane Kiffin because apparently he was not super aware of a Kilo and what they were up to. So that's sort of an interesting subplot of the whatever happened with the Kilo Stone leaving. I'll leave it at that. I won't call it poaching, but clearly bizarre circumstances with his departure at the time. And, at the end of the day, the way that I look at that is you've now cleared a path for Horace Lockett to play a lot more. And that's a guy that's going to give you, regardless of what happens this year, that is going to pay dividends for you the next 2 years after that he plays more this year because his path's been cleared up with a guy that maybe he was not super far away from playing, but Kilo was a guy that kept Horace off the field a little bit last year. Now he's gone, so like that guy gets to play more, and that's a guy that has a crap ton of potential. So yeah, I'm not real broken up looking at what's going on. I think it's funny that there always seems to be somebody that's like the hot guy in the spring, and then or like whatever, and then that's the guy who ends up leaving. Or there've been a lot of these weird stories where someone gets hurt, like who's going to be a breakout player or whatever. Other stuff that we'll have a war room coming up. Probably next week. I'm traveling next week, so maybe next Friday before I go. I got to go down to Florida for work stuff, but for a 7-on-7 tournament thing that I'm covering. But maybe next Friday we'll drop a football war room, like more of team stuff, which I didn't really get into in the last one. Any other questions, guys, before we kind of wrap this up? There's some other stuff I want to talk about, but we're already running it, closing in on 45 minutes, so I don't want to go too long. And my crazy toddler, I can hear him above me getting anxious for me to come up and say goodnight. Let me double check the board. See if there's anything else anyone wanted to know. Oh yeah, the GT golf thing. It was, what's funny about that, man? I'm like pretty stoic when I watch. Like usually, most Georgia Tech athletic stuff I'm at, right. Like, and I don't play golf. I'm not like super into golf, but I found myself getting like a little like being a little more carried away than I would be watching normally. Like something that would be more detached from, like hoping that they would pull that out because it would have been a great story. And I really like what Bruce has done with the program, and it was very frustrating. This is why I can't play golf. I don't have the patience for that, and that you can have like one or two shots go bad, and like it was very tough. Like, and someone said they played on the '93 team that lost to Florida on the last hole in Duval. But yeah, I was like I was kind of amped up. We watched the back nine. When I got home from running around, and it was, my wife was sitting there with me, and she was sort of like surprised at like how interested I was in it. And I watched the Masters, and that's about it. I've covered some golf tournaments over the years, but I just wanted to see them win. I thought it would be a cool story, and it would have been good for Georgia Tech. And so it was a little frustrating to watch, but a great run by them. And that's the thing people got to realize and not like get caught up in. Sometimes you don't win, but it was still an awesome run they had, and it's unfortunate that they came a couple shots short of pulling it off, really. So it wasn't even like they didn't lose like a huge way. It was super close. So that's gonna haunt some of those kids for a little while, but hopefully they'll get past it. Maybe make another run next year. But it was very exciting. That's the first time I've watched. And it might be the first time I've ever watched like NCAA golf on TV that I can think of. So it sucked me in. I'm sure it sucked all. I mean, I saw the board. You guys were all into it too. So that was very cool. It was good to get them that moment. It would be nice to see someone, in one of the non-rev sports win, or one of the rev neutral sports win something. I think it'd be great for Jay as well, Jay Bat. But appreciate everyone checking in on Friday night, and those who are watching this later. I'll be trying to do this like once a week at least if I can. I'll probably do the next one next weekend from Florida at some point. I gotta see what the 7-on-7 schedule is for the thing I'm going to, but maybe we can do a hotel version. So thanks to everyone for joining us, and we will see you next time. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and that helps our algorithm and helps me do more of these things and monetize it. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night.